All right. My name is Sarthak Bhardwaj, and welcome again to Letter of Law Interviews. Today, I'm so excited to be in conversation with none other than Swapnil Tripathi, a lawyer, founder of the Basic Structure blog, and now a master's student at Oxford University. So first of all, Swapnil, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Sarthak. It's a pleasure. I'm very happy that we can chat about our mutual love for law and legal history and constitutional law today.
Indeed.
Looking forward to that.
Indeed. So how have you been doing? You recently moved to Oxford. How has it been over there?
Yeah, I mean, the weather change is a bit difficult to adjust with because we take the sun for granted in India. And I've been told that it's the last month where we get to see the sun here. So I'm trying to soak all of it in, but I'm currently in self-isolation for 14 days. I get off in a couple of days. So I'm really looking forward to exploring the city and the amazing colleges they have.
Of course.
Because a lot of our renowned Indians have been here. So I'm trying to find one Indian for every college and try understanding their story and everything. So possibly to write on it later. But otherwise, it's been good. People are great and it's a great place to be in.
That's great to know. So I have a lot to unpack here. I have a lot of questions that I want to ask you. So in the first set of questions, I want to talk about your law school life. So when did you decide to do law? And I ask this because law as a conscious decision is not taken by most students. There's only a few of them. Some choose law by elimination. Some have their parents choose law for them. So what was it for you?
Yes. So for me also, I was a very confused student at the end of my class 10th. I definitely knew I didn't want to take up sciences because I think I was very bad at it. And I believe if I would have succumbed to the societal pressure, I won't say parental pressure because my family never pressurized me for any career path. So I would have, I think, either been a horrible engineer or a horrible doctor. And I think that wouldn't be good for anybody. So I was just trying to explore options as to what can I possibly do. I decided to drop maths also in class 11th and 12th. And I would have been the second person in my family to do that because everybody else is exceptional in maths. So then my father just was giving me possible career options. And he just said, okay, there's a new concept of a national law universities. Why don't you try? Why don't you go for a mock class? So I went for a mock legal class at one of the law prep tutorials here, Career Launcher. And I think that was the day when I decided that this is what I want to do. I found it extremely fascinating. And in the first class, I was told that why law as a profession is great, how it's so empowering. And I just found it very fascinating and interesting. It just seemed, it had so much of your application of your mind. And in terms of my background also, I had been a debater in school. I had always liked participating in such activities where I get a chance to speak. So that way, law seemed to be a great option. And then slowly, I believe with more and more I read about our profession, more and more I read about the kind of things we do, I fell in love with the subject and the profession more, which is why I think I fortunately till now enjoy what I do. So that's how it came. It was more of a chance. It was never planned that when I was a child, I used to be like, I'll be a district magistrate. Some people say they'll be a sports person, whatever. So it was all by chance that I was just trying options. This turned out to be something I really enjoyed.
Right. So I was reading about you and I was researching about you and I found out that you've done a lot of things in law school. For one, you've written a lot. On your blog, I saw there's a lot of writing that you've done. And not only short articles, but long articles as well. And then you also set up the Constitutional Law Society in NAV Jodhpur. So having done so much in a law school where there's constantly so much happening, how do you suggest that a law student makes the most of her time in law school? How do they find their interest and what works for them?
See, so when one goes to law school, there are too many things that happen in a law school. It's just about you figuring out which ones you want to do. Doing everything and being good at everything is rare. I won't say it's impossible because I know people who've excelled at almost everything. But it's convenient to just try your hands at everything and then figure out which one is it that you're very good at. For instance, I tried mooting. I figured out that was not my cup of tea. I didn't particularly excel at it. So I just decided to, okay, if this is not working out, let me try writing. And writing was something that did work out. Why I believe writing was important is because it gave me many factors. For instance, writing was something I know will stay forever. Even 80 years, 100 years down the line, people will still pick up something I've written and be like, oh, this is a great article, or this is a bad article. And writing gives you a lot of, it has a very wide reach. Something you write in our internet age reaches almost everybody. And as lawyers and law students, I just believe that all of us need to be heavily opinionated. If somebody says that as a lawyer you have no opinion, or as a law student, then that's very sad. We are supposed to have opinions on everything happening in the world and the country, because everything concerns the law. Which is why out of all the activities I tried my hand at, I narrowed down on writing, because I felt that I was fairly decent with it, and I thought that it was giving me results, the kind of results I wanted. But otherwise, I mean, this is a question I've been asked a lot as to how do you figure out what all to do. There is no one right answer. I mean, first 2 years, 3 years, experiment as much as you can. Try everything under the sun. Try debating, try mooting, try writing. If you're good at sports, play sports. There's no harm with that. But just then narrow it down to one or two things which you believe you're better at in comparison to others, and then just focus on them. I think that seemed to have worked for me, at least in my time at law school. Yeah.
Right. So, on staying on the topic of writing, I want to talk about the basic structure now. First of all, it completed 2 years, so congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I read your congratulatory, celebratory post also. Very well done. And the article you put out today with regard to fantastic stuff.
Thank you.
So, so first up, why the name, The Basic Structure?
Yeah. So, see, I am a big constitutional law lover. I love the subject. I think that's something I'm very grateful to some professors who introduced me to it and taught me so well. So actually the story goes back to Constitutional Law Society. So when I was in law school in the 4th year, I founded this body called the Constitutional Law Society, which is doing some amazing work now. So we were just brainstorming on what all possible activities we can do. And I wanted us to undertake initiatives so that we can explain the law to people. Because if you read biographies, I'm a big lover of biographies, and you read all of them, and all these great lawyers and judges have always said that law should be understood by everybody. And that's something I very strongly believe in. So I thought that we came up with an initiative wherein we used to pick up key Supreme Court decisions and explain them, break them down in simple English, etc. So we were looking for a name for it. And I suggested The Basic Structure, but nobody bought it. So it worked out for me. I could use it for my blog. Why I used it was because it's first of all a very important doctrine when it comes to constitutional law. And second, my purpose with the blog was going to be to make things simple and very easy to understand, very basic. So the basic and basic structure made sense.
Right.
And since this was going to be a constitutional law blog, I thought it's good if I pick a constitutional law related legalese. And it did work out. So thank God the society didn't agree on the name, so I could use it for my own purposes.
Yeah, it worked out well. So since you said that the purpose behind your writing is to bring it out to the masses and write in as simple a format as possible, which is quite evident to anyone who reads your articles. So how do you achieve that? Because I've read some of your articles, especially which are explaining laws. Some of them are very complex ideas, but you manage to break them down in a manner that even people outside the legal fraternity can understand them. So what's your writing and research process? And how do you suggest that, people like me who are just starting out with legal writing can achieve that?
Yeah. See, I'm personally never been a fan, even as a reader, to read stuff which is very complex. If it requires me to, of course, there are writers who write like that, and law is a very complex subject anyway. But I already knew that there is a lot of writing that is complex out there. So I'm not adding anything to it as a law student. When I started off my blog, I was like, there are already so many celebrated names with such amazing blogs that they have. So it's not going to help. Plus, I have always believed that I've seen around me normal citizens and just people from all walks of life just thinking that law is very complex, which is very peculiar to our country only, I believe. If you meet people from other countries and see how their courts and everything function, they're relatively aware about their rights. They know what remedies they have in law more than a normal average Indian would. And then, so that's always been at the back of my mind. And then when I read Mr. Palkhiwala's biography, he himself was very famous for these budget speeches he used to give. And he
Right.
used to famously remark that I believe my budget speeches would be a success if a common man who attends it someday goes ahead and becomes the prime minister. And in fact, that did happen. One of his attendees did become the prime minister. So all of them stressed a lot on expressing yourself in simple language. And they also say that that's a great style of arguing if you can break down your argument in simple English. And that's what all great lawyers do. Their argumentation style is very simple. It's not complex. It's easy to follow,
Yeah.
which is why I decided that, okay, I'm going to write simple because that's something I like reading. So I think for anybody to able to understand that, it will be easier, which is why I started with that. And I think it fared off well because I was never catering to very established academicians or judges or professors, because I was always catering to, for instance, even my neighbor should be able to understand what I've written. And I think that seemed to work out because as I wrote in that 2-year post, that the readers of my blog are my school teachers, are my friends' parents, are law students in their first year and second year when they're trying to understand what the law is, and it's very complex in
Right.
the beginning.
Right.
So that has always been my aim with writing. Now, when it comes to researching, I follow a very simple rule. I should write what I want to read. If
Uh-huh.
I write on something that nobody is discussing, even I won't want to read it.
Mm.
So when something contemporary happens in our country or in the world, and something has been discussed so much, my aim is that, okay, let me pick up that topic, let me simplify it. So anybody who tomorrow wants to debate on this issue with anybody or talk about it, they're informed in their approach. They know at least what the correct position of law is. Because especially in our times, there is so much divided opinion, there is so much polarization. So that's why I never take a political stance also in my blog. It's
Yeah.
always that, okay, this is the law. Is this valid, arguably, or not valid? That's all I do.
Yeah.
So it's up to the readers for them to decide whether they agree or not. I'm just telling them that this is the law. And by doing it in a simple language, I think it helps me reach to a wider audience so that they can easily follow as to what I'm trying to say. I think that's been my motto with my writing and researching both.
Right.
Yeah.
So the next set of questions I have is with regard to what you did post law school. So after
Yeah.
graduating, did you? I believed you practiced that in Delhi. That's what your LinkedIn
Yeah.
said. So how was
Yeah.
it like? How was it like being a young lawyer at the bar? Can you recall some of the experiences that stood out?
So I was fortunate because I got an opportunity to start in Delhi, and Delhi has the biggest names to offer.
Yeah.
And I personally, I think that's my reassurance that I really want to practice the law, because when you also graduate, and if you do intend to litigate, when you put on your band and your gown and your robe, I think it's just a very empowering feeling, just going to the courts thinking that you can do so much. So, and I did get the chance of seeing some very key matters being argued in the court, briefing very good lawyers and being in those briefings, although I didn't do it myself. Like, for instance, I've been a very big fan and admirer of Mr. Datar,
Wow.
Mr. Arvind Datar. He's been somebody who, his life journey is something I really look up to, his experiences and his love and passion for the law. So in one of the matters we were doing, I got the chance to be in the same room when we were briefing him. And my highlight of the entire event was that first, he's such a down to earth man. Like, he has no qualms about being one of the biggest lawyers this country has. And I mean, this is I had read about, this is stuff about legends which I had read, that they are so nice to juniors and everything. But Mr. Datar has this amazing habit that when he steps into the room, he'll offer tea, coffee to everybody in the room, but he'll make sure that the junior most are catered to in the nicest possible manner. So he'll ask you if you had something, if you want something. Always open to a suggestion, even though you're not the senior most in the room. And my highlight was that when I was told that we are briefing Mr. Datar, I went home, I got a copy of the Courtroom Genius, and I was carrying it with me in the hope that I'll get it signed. And when the briefing did end, I ran after him. I told him that, sir, I mean, I've just joined the profession. I'm a big fan. Can you please sign it? And to the amazement of 20 people in the room, he had left. He said, yeah, sure. He took me back inside the room. Everybody got up thinking that what's happening. And then he was like, no, I wanted to sign it properly. And then he asked my name, spoke to me for 2-3 minutes, and then signed the copy. It was that. Then another experience was, I've always been a very big admirer of Professor P.K. Tripathi. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a very noted a constitutional law scholar of the earlier times, the times of Chief Justice Hidayatullah.
Okay.
So I've always been a big fan of his. And then I got to brief his son, who's also a very senior lawyer, Mr. Parag Tripathi. He's a senior counsel at the Supreme Court.
Right.
So that was another experience because I walked up to him after the briefing and I told him that, so I'm a very big admirer of your father's work. And I think even he didn't expect a early 20 student to know his father's work, who's no more since a very long amount of years. So I think these kind of experiences you get once you start practicing, and Delhi gives you that exposure. Seeing Dr. Singhvi argue, seeing Mr. Sibbal argue, Mr. Rodgi argue, and these are very recurring faces in these courts. So even though you don't get to speak to them and have a one-on-one with them, but just being in the same vicinity as them, it seems amazing. Like, if I may add, I saw Mr. Nariman and Soli Sorabji in the courts. And the most beautiful thing about them, I was discussing this with somebody the other day, that they were not there to argue. I mean, their love for the law is so immense that they were just there to sit in the court and watch what's happening. Mr. Sorabji just sat there for a couple of hours and just left. That's all. And that just shows, I mean, you've read about lawyers like Mr. Kanga doing this when he stopped practicing. He used to just sit there in court and just see what's happening. And when you see it live happening in front of you, it's like stuff that legends are made of. So yeah, these are my noteworthy experiences which stood out in my first year as like a lawyer. Yeah.
Indeed. No, it's interesting that you'd talk about the courtroom genius. In fact, the first video that I put out on the channel was with regard to how Nani Palkiwala became a lawyer accidentally. So interesting stuff. So I'm gonna have to move a little quickly because Zoom only allows us like 30 minutes of video time. So was pursuing an LLM always part of your plan, or when did you decide that this is what I want to do?
So to be very honest, it was not a plan always because I didn't think I'll get through. In my first few years, if anybody would have told you that you might be sitting in Oxford, because but then a lot of things happened in law school. I started developing an interest in constitutional law very deeply post my third year when I got the chance to, work with Professor Massey, and I saw that I believe understood what constitution is, and I lived the subject by working with him. So he recommended that he still believes that I should not practice and become a law professor. So whenever I speak to him, that's something he reiterates. So he told me that about his experience by studying when he learned the pure theory of law from Kelsen in Berkeley. So he told me that if you like constitution law, you should definitely go out and study from the people who we teach you here. We show them, we give you their articles, you should go and read from them. So that's when it first hit me. And then a lot of things started happening for me professionally. So I just thought that, okay, I might give it a shot. So it was a very last minute decision at the end of my fourth year that, okay, I should consider applying, there's no harm. And then fortunately, Oxford did happen.
Great. So yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
So in law school, there's a lot of students who wish to pursue an LLM abroad. What would you say to them? What can they do in law school, and what can they do that would not just get them to a foreign college? I understand that there isn't a straitjacket formula that if you write so many papers, you'll get in. If you do this smooth, you'll get in. Do you feel that whatever a person likes in law school, if they do it diligently enough, that would give them enough substance to make a credible application to a reputed college?
Definitely. In fact, I'm the strongest believer in it, because if you try looking for conventional things to do and then you'll get through, if you think that you have you've done these corporate moves or you've done corporate internships and you've done the conventional stuff, you'll get through. I've never subscribed to that ideology. Neither have I done it myself. I believe it's always better to identify those one or two things which you're good at and then be damn good at it.
Right.
Like then you should be amongst one of the few people in that particular activity or field that really stand out. And that can be anything. That can be, if you're a debater, just be an exceptional debater then. Do all the best possible debates that are there. If you write, then write extensively, write very well. But it's just that when it comes to masters also, you need to be a little careful about your grades because sadly, that's one of the parameters they have, that it should be a student who is at least in the top 10% or top 20% of your batch. Apart from that, pick any activity which you think you're very good at and just excel at it. And with respect to papers, just one thing to point out, which is that the content trumps the number of publications you have. So it's not like you should have some 30, 40 publications when half of them are not that great. It's always good, even if you have 2 or 3 articles, but they are very good in quality. So quality always trumps quantity. And that's a very bad trend we have in India, that people think I write 50 articles, so I'm going to be very good. I'm considered a very established writer. That's not the case. First, even if you're writing that much, your quality should not be compromised, because quality is very, very important. That can't be stressed enough.
True.
Especially in masters, because if you don't have good quality articles, that means you don't research well and you don't publish well. And in a masters, you're supposed to write. You'll be writing so many essays that you need to at least have that sorted before you apply.
Right, I understand. And so, what's your plan ahead when you finish your masters? Have you given it a thought? What do you wish to do after that?
I have actually. I mean, I want to continue litigating. I don't want to give that up, because I think as a lawyer we have a lot of opportunities to make a difference. So I'm not really sure on which forum. I haven't decided if I want to go back to Delhi or I want to go back to my hometown in Kanpur and practice in the Allahabad High Court. I'm not very sure. But I do want to continue litigating, because I think it has really allowed me to make a lot of difference in terms of my city. So recently, if I may share an incident, since I'm so concerned about Kanpur and my city and everything. So recently I had gone home in October, and I saw that despite the central government pushing for a Clean India campaign, the streets of Kanpur were extremely polluted. And I really discussed it with my father that I really wanted to do something about it. And I just went around the city, clicked pictures of every possible place that was dirty. And then I wrote a very, very strongly worded letter to the chief minister, citing out the laws that are violated and, why it's so polluted. And I think, and 2 months later, I was told by my father that the officials did come, and they requested my father to accompany him, saying that they've cleaned every possible area that I had mentioned in the picture. So I think that would not have happened had I not been aware of what the law is and what my rights are. So I think that's something I can continue doing after my master's, and that's why I definitely want to come back to India and do it. And then, of course, you get to represent people in courts also and make a difference even there, which is something I really, really want to do. So I definitely am very keen on coming back and practicing.
Right. First of all, congratulations on that. I mean, law belongs to the street, and you did bring it back to the streets. So that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, in law
Thank
school,
you.
that's what we learn, right? That law is a tool for social transformation.
Yeah.
So it should be used like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I'm very,
Yeah,
very
definitely.
happy to know that you intend to come
Thank
back.
you.
Hopefully, I'll get to intern with you.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Right. We're running out of time, so I'll just ask my final set of questions. So you mentioned that you read a lot. What have you been reading recently? And on your blog, there's an entire section dedicated to books. But if you were to pick out at most 3 books that you feel
3,
okay, so you want to take 5?
Yeah, I'll go with 5. I
Okay,
think 3 is
5.
tough.
All right.
Yeah.
So first, what are you reading these days? And secondly,
Sorry. Please complete your question.
Yeah. So secondly, the 5 books that you recommend all law students read during their time in law school.
So I like reading a lot of legal history, biographies, constitutional law core books, and history in general. But I'll stick with the books every law student should read. Recently, I've just finished Mr. Shashi Tharoor's new book, Tharoor, if I'm pronouncing it correct. It's a wonderful read. Everybody should read it. I feel very educated after reading it. My top 5 books will be, I recommend everybody reads Mr. Palkhiwala's both biographies. You need to read Nani Palkhiwala Alive by N.V. Kamath, and you need to read The Courtroom Genius by Mr. Sorabji and Mr. Datar. I think there's no other book that can inspire you if you want to be a lawyer. I mean, for a man who had a speech impairment, who had a writer's cramp, to become the greatest lawyer this country has ever seen is unparalleled. I think that's the biography that's moved me a lot, especially the one which focuses more on his life rather than his career as a lawyer, which is by N.V. Kamath.
Sure.
Second, I would recommend everybody reads The Family Story, which is the autobiography of Lord Denning, who is one of the finest judges that England ever saw.
Right.
So one should definitely read that. That's also a very inspiring tale of how liberal a judge can be. Apparently, his house was burned down by the writers, and the man still didn't have that vendetta to convict them unnecessarily, because that's how broad-minded he was when it comes to justice. Then I think, to understand India and understand our constitution's development, everybody should read Working a Democratic Constitution by Granville Austin.
Mhm.
I think for any legal history lover, there is no better book which can take you through India's journey from independence till the late 90s. Then there is one of my all-time favorite books by Professor Godboys called Judges of the Supreme Court.
Right.
So anybody who likes legal history knows that book is the finest book on judges you will find. It's the most well-researched book. And I give big credits to my media law teacher who introduced me to it, Professor Parveen. Then last book I would recommend, there are two actually. One is Neither Roses Nor Thorns by Justice H.R. Khanna. That's also a very inspiring book, very simply written, and very inspiring as to how courageous he was. And then there's also a book I recently read, which is the autobiography of Justice P. Reddy, called The Judiciary I Served. It's not very known, I'm not so sure, but if you want to read up on Keshwananda Bharati and the developments around it, you should definitely read it. And the reason I've put a list of all the books out on my website is because while I was on my blog is because when I was a law student, I used to really struggle finding good books.
Right.
So I was like, there's no harm in just putting a list of everything I've read and everything I've liked. If somebody wants just a one ready place, they can go look for it and read it. There's no harm in sharing that. So these are the top 5 books I would recommend. But the good thing is there's so much literature being written these days that there's no dearth of possible stuff you can read. But these are like my top 5. These are something I recommend everybody to read. Because Falkiwala's book was recommended to me by my my mentor in the profession. Mr. Sancheti had told me that before you start practicing, you need to read this book. So that's why I recommend it to everybody all the time.
Great. If I could just add a couple of books to this wonderful list.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so you talked about books by Granville Austin.
Yeah.
So Granville Austin is usually given the credit of writing the most comprehensive account of the Constitution. But I recently finished reading Madhav Khosla's India's Founding Moment. That reaches, that comes quite close and even surpasses it, if I may venture to say that. And secondly, a great addition to Mr. Gadboy's book. Is it Dr. Gadboy's? I'm not sure.
Yeah, he was a professor.
Great. So we'll just say Gadboy's book, Professor Gadboy's book. A great addition to that would be Abhinav Chandrachud's Supreme Whispers.
Yeah, informal Supreme Whispers.
Whispers. It builds on the work of Professor Gadboy's. And on Keshwananda Bharati, I believe T.R. Andhyarujana's account of the Keshwananda Bharati case.
Unfortunately, it's not available on Amazon. You're lucky to have a copy.
Yeah,
if you do.
When I bought my copy, it said it's the final copy available.
Yeah, it's not available. I've not had the chance to read it. I've read so much around it from other books, but I think the meeting got upgraded. Yeah, but otherwise, I don't have the fortune of reading it. And interesting, you mentioned Dr. Chandrachud. The good thing with that brings me back to my point of why simple writing is important. Exactly, if you read all of his books and you read Dr. Chintan Chandrachud's recent book, The Cases That India Forgot, all of these books can be read by anybody. And that is why you understand that simple writing is picking up. People are writing so that people understand what the law is. Absolutely. And both of their books are a brilliant example of how they're trying to reach the masses, and it's not complicated for anybody to follow.
Absolutely.
So I completely agree with your book recommendations. They are definitely. I think they find a mention. I've read them, so I know they're very good books.
Of course. No, I thought it's good to mention them because they overlap with the books you've mentioned. Well, that brings us to the end of the conversation. Thank you so much, Swapnil, for joining me today. I know you must be rather busy these days with the transition.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much again, and congratulations on joining Oxford, and all the very best for your future plans.
Thank you so much. And keep doing the amazing work you're doing. The video you had put on Mr. Niren Day and Mr. Seedway, very interesting. I think you should do more of that, because knowing a bit of legal history around cases makes those cases interesting, and you never forget them.
Absolutely.
I've had professors used to do it, So if you just teach me Keshwananda Bharti tomorrow, I'll not remember it. But if you tell me everything that happened around it, I'll never forget that judgment. So
Exactly.
that's good. You should definitely continue doing that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'm so glad you found the video interesting. And again, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
I'll just stop.